The class fell silent the moment the new student entered. Not because of his appearance, though the olive-toned skin, square jaw, and short-cut hair stood out among the blues, purples, and scales of the other species, but because of the scent. Raw iron and adrenaline. Subtle, but unmistakable. The human had arrived. Sorna 9's intergalactic scholarium boasted students from 312 species, many of which had claws, venom glands, or Neuralink combat instincts. And yet, in that moment, they all shifted slightly away from the human. "That's him," whispered Vrek, a four-eyed Krith with translucent tendrils for lips. "The Deathworlder." Lena Quell watched from the front row, antennae twitching with restrained curiosity. She'd read the reports. Terra, a Class 12 hostile biosphere. A planet where gravity crushed bones, water killed cells, and even the plants hunted. Now one of them sat just 3 desks behind her. The human set down his bag. No ceremonial greetings. No display of social scent. He simply nodded to the instructor, took out a stylus, and stared at the holoscreen. Focused. Silent. Still. Too still. Instructor Vlad cleared its voice. "Welcome, cadets. Today we cover carnivore-omnivore diplomacy. As many of you know, our guest student is Lieutenant Elias Vale, on exchange from the United Terran Forces." Several eyes flicked back to the human. He didn't move. "Lieutenant Vale," Vlad continued, "your people are noted for their diverse dietary needs. Would you care to elaborate?" The human slowly looked up. His voice, when it came, was steady and even. "Sure. We eat plants, animals, fungi. In some cases, synthetic proteins. Depends on the context, survival, preference, or tradition." There was a collective flinch when he said, "Animals." Vrek coughed out loud. "You kill your food?" The human looked him straight in the eye. "Yes. When necessary." "Primitive," muttered Zarnix, a feathered Thalaxi in shimmering robes. "Barbaric." Elias didn't blink. "That barbarism built our first warp gate. It's not pretty. But it works." The room buzzed. But Lena wasn't listening to the crowd. She was watching his eyes. Calm. Calculating. But not cold. There was something else. Survivor's empathy. The class resumed. Holo spun through aerial hunts on Zalari Prime and the ethical treaties of cross-species predation. But the atmosphere remained brittle. Jaws clenched. Scales rustled. Even the apex species students couldn't quite relax. Then came the lunch break. The cafeteria shimmered with filtered light from the twin suns. Alien students clustered by species, the aquatic res in their hydration domes, the high-born silic in synchronized movement, the herbivorous Gvarn around a nutrient mist table. Elias sat alone. Lena hesitated, then approached. "Mind if I join you?" He shrugged. "Free table." She sat carefully. "You made an impression." "Always do." There was silence. Then he opened his lunchbox. Lena recoiled. It was a slab of meat. Still pink. Thinly sliced. Raw. "You're eating flesh," she said flatly. He nodded. "It's called sashimi. Harmless. Cultured protein. No animal died for this. Why eat it raw? Preserves the flavor. And it reminds me of home." The conversation around them stopped. Half the room stared in horror. Zarnix dropped his spork. Vrek gagged audibly. "Do all humans eat like this?" Lena asked. Elias looked around. "No. Some have preferences. But where I'm from, you eat what you can. When you can. We don't waste." A deep voice boomed across the hall. "Is that a threat, Deathworlder?" It was Krovthuin, a Brackary Workin, standing over 8 feet tall, plated in bone-hardened skin. Elias didn't stand. "No. It's lunch." Krov's claws extended. "You bring your death food here and expect no fear?" Elias lifted a single brow. "I expect intelligence." "Guess that was too much." Gasps. Several students backed away. Lena's heart pounded. Krav snarled. Careful, primate. Finally, Elias stood. He wasn't taller. Wasn't heavier. But somehow, the air shifted around him, like the room tilted in his favor. You think I'm dangerous because of meat? He said. Because of where I'm from. You call us Deathworlders like it's an insult? He stepped forward. Every movement was slow. Precise. Let me tell you something, Brackery. On Terra, we live beside creatures that can melt bone. We hunt in packs. We wage war. But we also build. We heal. We protect. He glanced at the others. You fear us because you don't understand what it takes to survive a world that wants you dead from the moment you're born. Krav didn't answer. His fists flexed, but his stance faltered. Elias leaned in. I'm not the threat. I'm the warning. The silence was absolute. Then Krav stepped back. Without a word, he turned and left. The moment he was gone, breath returned to the room. Slowly, chatter resumed. Lena stared at Elias. You didn't escalate, she said quietly. You could have fought. He sat back down. I didn't come to fight. Then why? He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the weight behind his eyes. To prove we're not just Deathworlders. We're human. That means something. She nodded, slowly. It does now. Outside the dome, the twin suns dipped behind the trees of Sornanaying. But inside, something brighter had just sparked. A presence. A defiance. A beginning. They didn't challenge him again. Not openly. But the air around Elias Vale was no longer charged with fear. It was heavy with calculation. Every alien cadet in the Scholarium began reassessing what it meant to call Earth a death world. Because Elias hadn't roared, postured, or flexed his strength. He had stared down a Brackery Workin and made him retreat. And that rattled them more than any violence ever could. In the week that followed, the instructors tried to restore normalcy. Interspecies ethics. Astropolitical theory. Xenopsychology. But no one was thinking about protocol anymore. They were thinking about him. Why didn't he react with aggression? Instructor Vlad whispered to the staff council. Brackery threats demand a retaliatory display. Humans are unpredictable, muttered a res administrator. He used restraint to assert dominance. It wasn't dominance, Lena Quell said from the doorway. It was mercy. They all turned to her. She continued quiet but firm. He didn't win by threat. He won by choice. And that scared Krovthun more than Claus ever could. Elsewhere, in the simulation chamber, Elias adjusted the haptic rig on his exosuit. Training protocol, hostage extraction, Class 7, the AI intoned. The terrain shimmered into view, a war-ravaged colony, burning ruins under an acid-hazed sky. Hostiles were spread through tight urban blocks, armed and organized. Standard drill for most cadets. But not for Elias. He moved like he'd been there before. Not just in Sims, but for real. 3 seconds into the simulation, he slid under a collapsed tower, silenced 2 hostiles with precision shots, and breached a safe house using nothing but a repurposed door hinge. Observers gawked from the control deck. He's improvising outside of program parameters, said one Thalaxi commander. No, he's adapting, Lena whispered. The moment Elias reached the final hostage, he picked them up, ignoring the injury protocols, and triggered a smoke charge from his own armor's fusion vent, creating a visual haze that let him escape through a hole he'd blown 2 minutes earlier. Mission complete. Time, 2:43. No injuries. No collateral. No backup. When he emerged from the sim chamber, sweat streaked his brow. A thin scar above his brow caught the overhead light. Lena stood waiting. You've done that before, she said. He shrugged. Close enough. Where? Elias paused. War fronts. Earth still has them. Not every city glows in peace. Then why come here? To a school? He looked at her. Because I'm tired of surviving in ruins. I want to make sure someone else doesn't have to. Lena studied him. The scars on his knuckles. The way his eyes constantly scanned exits, checked shadows. This wasn't training for him. This was living. The real trouble began during the interscalarium exchange. Cadets from rival academies visited for the Unity Trials, a competition designed to foster peace through simulated conflict. It worked, usually. Until a Zarnan team arrived. They were Apex-class predators. Faster than Krith. Stronger than Brackery. And smug beyond reason. Their leader, a towering silver-scaled warrior named Dral, spotted Elias from across the mess hall. "You," he growled, loud enough for all to hear. "You're the human." Elias didn't look up from his tray. Dral grinned, teeth like obsidian. "They say you're from a death world. That you eat meat. That you stared down a workin." Elias calmly took a bite of protein loaf. "Didn't say you could sit." Dral stepped forward. "Is it true? You killed to survive?" Elias looked up. Slowly. "You mean, unlike your ancestors who hunted sentients for sport?" Murmurs spread like fire. Dral's smile dropped. "You've got strength," Elias said. "But strength without control? That's just noise. You insult my bloodline. I call it like I see it." Dral slammed his fist onto the table. "Then prove it. Arena match. Tomorrow." Elias stood. "No." Shock. Even Lena flinched. Dral blinked. "You refuse?" "I don't fight for fun." Dral's laugh echoed off the walls. "You're a coward!" Elias leaned close. Not loud. Not aggressive. But dangerous. "On Earth, when we fight, people die. And we remember. Every name. Every scream. So no, I'm not going to play your games. Because I've already seen too much war to pretend it's sport." He walked away. Lena followed. Outside, beneath the twin moons of Sorna, she caught up to him. "You humiliated him." Elias sighed. "He wanted me to. I didn't give him the satisfaction." "Why not? You could have taken him." "I know I could have. That's the point." She stepped in front of him. "Why are you really here, Elias?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "I was raised in a zone we called the Green. Jungle warfare every month. Half the soldiers around me didn't make it to 17. I came here because someone said if I wanted to change things, I had to stop killing long enough to learn how. And now?" He looked at her, eyes dark and tired. "Now I'm remembering why that's so hard." Final scene, chapter cliffhanger. The next morning, the arena was packed. Dral stood inside, pacing, roaring to his team about dominance and legacy. But Elias wasn't there. Then the screens flashed. A new video, hacked into the feed. It showed Elias's simulation run. Clean. Brutal. Strategic. Calculated. The footage zoomed in on the final moment, him carrying the hostage through fire. Then his voice played, recorded the night before. "You want to fight? Watch what it really takes to protect someone. This isn't a game. It never was. You wanted a predator? I'm a protector. That's what humans are. And that scares you more than any blade ever could." Silence. And then, applause. From cadets. From staff. From alien warriors. Even Dral froze, shoulders slumped. Lena smiled. Humanity had just taught them a lesson they didn't know they needed. And Elias Vale never lifted a finger. The world hadn't ended in blood. Not this time. After Elias's message interrupted the arena feed, silence fell across the scalarium. Not awkward silence. Not fear. Respect. No one challenged him the next day. Or the day after that. Even Dral, the apex predator of the Zarnan delegation, had lowered his eyes and left the arena without another word. Pride unbroken, but dented. Thoughtful. Instructor Vlad addressed the Class 3 rotations later. "In light of recent events, the Council of Peaceful Integration has requested that Cadet Vale give a presentation on human conflict doctrine." Elias frowned. You want a war lecture? No, Vlad said. We want a lesson in restraint. The auditorium was full. Full of clawed warriors, bioengineered strategists, empathic telepaths, and memory-bonded archivists. All gathered to hear what a Deathworlder would say about not fighting. Elias stood on the platform, arms behind his back. No weapons. No armor. Just the uniform. And the scars. When I was 12, he began. I killed someone for the first time. Gasps. Not because of the death, but the honesty. It wasn't war. It was survival. I didn't have training. I had a rock. He had a blade. I walked out. He didn't. He let that settle. Earth teaches us early. The environment. The politics. The people. Everything is a test. So humans adapt. We don't get stronger. We get smarter. We find ways to survive until surviving becomes second nature. He paced slowly. But that survival comes at a cost. It changes how we see the world. Every noise becomes a threat. Every gesture is measured. We don't flinch after the gunshot. We're already moving before it. The crowd was silent. But that edge, what you call predatory instinct, it's not who we are. It's what we use. The same way we use math. Or fire. Or language. He paused at the edge of the platform. Predators kill. Protectors choose. We can be either. The difference is purpose. He looked over the crowd, locking eyes with alien cadets who had once doubted him. Feared him. I chose to come here because I want to be more than what my world made me. And if any of you think that restraint is weakness, look again. He tapped the scars on his wrist. These weren't earned from hiding. Afterward, as students left in thoughtful silence, Jral approached. No sneer. No sarcasm. Just a nod. You meant what you said. Elias nodded back. Still do. Jral considered this. Then extended a closed fist, Zarnan gesture of respect. Elias bumped it with his own. In that simple act, centuries of prejudice broke. Later that cycle, Lena found Elias alone in the atrium garden. He was watching a Terran flower bloom under an alien sun, its crimson petals twitching in response to the filtered starlight. You changed the entire school, she said. He shook his head. They changed themselves. I just reminded them who they were pretending not to be. She sat beside him. I've never seen someone turn down every challenge, every fight, and still win them all. I don't want to win, he said. I want to last. She smiled. Same thing sometimes. The next morning, Sorna 9's Scholarium made history. For the first time in its interstellar tenure, the Unity trials were replaced with the Guardian Initiative, a coalition program based on tactical restraint, planetary crisis mediation, and interspecies defense diplomacy. Its first instructor? Lieutenant Elias Vale. His first class gathered in the central gymnasium. Cadets from predator species, prey species, neutral planet dwellers, sentient machines. He stood in front of them in a combat harness, holding nothing but a blank training cube. He threw it across the room. Then caught it. Silence. Then, you want to be warriors? You want to be soldiers? Good. But first be shields. He scanned the room. Because out there, beyond the stars, there's more than teeth and fire. There are void storms. Genetic plagues. Civil wars waiting to ignite. He held up the cube. This isn't about domination. It's about decisions. If you walk into fire, do it because someone else couldn't walk out. He dropped the cube. It shattered. And every cadet leaned forward. Final scene, Lena's monologue, voice-over entry. They called him a Deathworlder. A monster. A threat. But he never once raised his voice. Never once raised his hand. And still, he changed everything. Now every cadet who passes through these halls studies more than tactics. They study Elias Vale. Not because he was the strongest, but because he was the first to realize strength meant nothing without control. They feared the predator. But what shook them was the protector,